Good evening, everyone. What I think we're going to do is that I will try to say a few words about the situation in Israel, especially in the realm, in the area of the relations between the Jewish majority and the Arab, the Palestinian minority in Israel, which is the focus of the Abraham initiatives. And then I will say a few words about what the Abraham Initiative is doing nowadays, especially nowadays, what are the challenges and how we're trying to answer them effectively. And Mira will jump in between as you...
I might not, but maybe I will,
but
I don't
But you
promise
should, I
anything.
think, because Mira is a board member at the Abraham Initiative. She
Has been for how long?
has been for a good number of years.
A long time.
And
Stop counting.
she is also an Israeli Arab citizen.
Yes.
And she is very familiar with the challenges and also opportunities and problems and issues that are connected with the area of Jewish-Arab relations in Israel. So Mira, please, whenever you want to.
I will, don't worry. I'm an outspoken woman.
Okay, so let me open by saying a few things about the current reality in Israel. And the first thing is the fact that in Israel nowadays, there are thousands of meeting points between Jews and Arabs. Okay, if until a decade or decade and a half ago, Jews and Arabs used to live in separate areas, separate towns. Arabs mainly in the north, in the Triangle area, in the eastern part of Israel, and in the Negev, and about 10% in the mixed cities, and Jews in Jewish cities. Nowadays, because of the fact that the Arab population has multiplied itself by over 10 times since the creation of the state, and at the same time, no new Arab towns and villages were built for the Arabs, they are migrating, moving to Jewish areas and Jewish towns that are becoming mixed. Not only that, but over the last decade and a half, the Israeli governments started to operate a methodological process which was meant to integrate Arab, mainly youngsters, into the higher education institutions, colleges and universities, and then into the labor market. Back in 2006, the Abraham initiatives carried out a research which was led by Professor Ezra Sadan and Dr. Ramzi Chalabi, a Jew and an Arab. Ezra Sadan used to be identified with the right wing in Israel. He was, many years ago, he was the executive director of the Treasury in Israel. He was identified with the Likud, and we hired him because we knew that he can affect the right wing or Likud governments. And we wanted those two scholars to try and estimate what is the loss to the Israeli economy by not integrating Arabs into the Israeli economy. And the finding was amazing, and they showed, the bottom line was that they showed a huge loss to the Israeli economy. And we presented this report at the Herzliya conference in 2007 to the then Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, who decided almost immediately to establish the Authority for the Economic Development of the Arab Sector in Israel under Prime Minister's office. And that started a number of 5-year plans for economic development and narrowing socioeconomic gaps between Jews and Arabs. And the result was that tens of thousands of Arab youngsters finished high school, graduated from high school with good scores, good matriculation scores, and were accepted into universities and colleges, and graduated from universities and are now being integrated into the labor market, into corporates, into the government sector, into NGOs, municipalities. Some continue with university, with the academia. And the result, as I said, is that Israeli workplaces are becoming mixed. And I'm talking about universities and hospitals and corporates and NGOs and municipalities, wherever you look. And all of those places, all of those diverse mixed places are now under threat. What happened in October 7th was a blow, was a shock, it was a slap in the face, or however you want to describe it. Not only to the Israeli military, but also to the potential, to the opportunity for Jews and Arabs to coexist in Israel in the future. All of this integration, all of those good relations, all of those work relations are at great risk because of the tensions, because of the fact that the level of anxiety between Jews and Arabs is extremely high, because of the fact that Israeli Arab citizens feel that while they cannot accept the notion that what Hamas did, that what Hamas did was in their name or in the name of the Palestinian cause, and people, I'll say a word about that later, but people basically wanted to disconnect themselves, not only from Hamas, but from Palestinian identity. And many Arabs in Israel started to identify after October 7th as Israelis for the first time. You know, after so many years where the Palestinian component in the identity of Israeli Arabs was higher, now people start to identify as Israelis. But also, they feel pain and sorrow and despair in regard to the situation in Gaza. Many people have relatives and friends, and part of their community is in the West Bank and in Gaza. And they see the destruction and they're devastated. And they don't feel, hi, welcome. And they don't feel that they are allowed or that is acceptable at all to express this pain. This, if you like, double or dual pain. Pain for Israel and pain for what is happening in Gaza. And this is the situation. People feel that they are silenced. Jews feel anxious. They fear, they're terrified. We're all terrified that, not only we suffer this terrible attack with so many casualties, and each one of us has relatives and friends that either, know someone who was kidnapped or were kidnapped or serve in the army or were evacuated. Myself, I never thought about myself as someone who was involved in this thing, but I grew up in a moshav not far from Nir Yitzchak, on the southern part of outside of Gaza Strip. This moshav is not there anymore. It was totally evacuated almost 5 months ago. People are now in Eilat and in Jerusalem, and they're not going back. They are not going back, even if the rockets will stop. They had enough for 20-25 years, and they're not going back. So the people are lost pretty much. So this is the situation, and what we're trying to do, Abraham Initiatives, is to keep it together, to not let it fall apart, because it can fall apart in a split second. Something can spark a chain of operations or hostilities or anything you want to call it. And
we've seen it. We saw it in May 2000 and last year. No, the year before.
May of 21.
Yeah, 21.
Yeah, we've seen in May of 21. We saw there was another round. Obviously not as serious as now, but another round of hostilities between Hamas and Israel. And Hamas fired a number of rockets even towards Jerusalem, and riots started in the big cities. And it was terrible. It was terrible because it was a wake-up call for us. In this sense, maybe it was not so terrible because it was a wake-up call. What could happen, and how fast we can deteriorate into an, excuse me for this expression, into a civil war inside of Israel. Inside of Israel. I'm not talking about the borders. I'm not talking about Hamas or Syria or Lebanon. I'm talking about inside Israel. And again, Jews and Arabs are meeting in endless contact points in Israel on a daily basis.
I think this is one of the points that people don't know about Israel when they hear the news. They see this frontier where there are Palestinians in one place and Israelis in one place, and attack happened on the south of Israel, and then soldiers go into Gaza. But they forget that 20% of the population inside of Israel is Palestinian, carrying an Israeli identity, but really feeling affiliation with their Palestinian brothers and sisters in Gaza. Now, this attack, this time on Israel, really, this was also the first time that I saw such solidarity within the Arab community with the people, with the Israelis in the south of Israel, for the horrible attack they suffered and the horrendous acts that Hamas did in the name of the Palestinian agenda. And you saw how Arab citizens of Israel, like myself, completely disowned, like completely stood up and said, this is not in my name, this is not something that I stand behind, and do not even try to present it as a Palestinian agenda or part of the Palestinian cause. This was the first time that I saw this in the Arab community in Israel. However, after this big show of solidarity, and they did their own campaigns to raise money and to host people in their homes, this was marvelous to watch in these very painful times, though. But the longer the operation in Gaza has gone on, of course they linger because they're feeling this solidarity with fellow Israelis. However, they see the destruction in Gaza, and they have people they know. I know people in Gaza who are trying to see if they're still alive, if they still have a place to shelter, if they have food, if they have clean water, if they have a toilet. Excuse me for the really, but it's gone to that level where people don't have a toilet. It's you have to imagine, the worst kind of disaster, of catastrophe happening to people. So these people are really torn in between these two sentiments, and then they feel that in the workplace their language suddenly is again a threat, and their culture is suddenly again a threat, and it's a very, very delicate fabric that we are talking about here in the inside of Israel. So it's not a war where you decide this is my enemy. These are people in the street. You don't recognize who's Arab, who's Jew. When you're walking in Jerusalem, or you're walking in Lid, or you're walking in Ramle, and you're walking in the north, or you don't know who's who. And so it creates really a very, very tense reality. And one, if we go back to the integration, that was the part where I wanted to join the Abraham initiatives. When I was growing up, nobody was working for this. Nobody was working for the integration. I had to integrate myself. As a Palestinian woman coming from a Palestinian village in Israel, I had decided that I'm no number two, no second-class citizen. I am going to integrate. I'm going to go and compete for the same things that Jewish people compete for. So I reached these places. I even represented Israel in the Eurovision, the first ever Palestinian to represent Israel in such a place in Arabic. That was another first. By the way, there are a lot of firsts that I did as an Arab in Israel, but that's like the biggest, okay? And I thought that in 2009 I would be the first and that a lot would follow. Unfortunately, I was the first and the last. And right now, when I look at this reality, I'm worried because except for the borders that we have that are problematic, the inner fabric of the Israeli society is in danger, the way I see it.
So why am I worried? I'm worried because of the fact that the interaction between Jews and Arabs in Israel is a success story. It is a success story, and we should not be confused about that. There is no other place in the world where the daily interaction between Jews and Muslims is so intensive as in Israel, and it's a positive interaction. It's a positive interaction. There are issues, but it is positive. It's a success, and we need to make sure that it is not collapsing. And this is the main goal of the Abraham initiatives at the moment. And to our advantage, we have the ability to operate projects, large-scale projects, which are accepted by the state, which are recognized and appreciated in many cases by the Israeli government. So we work with the Arab community, with the Arab establishment, with Arab mayors, even with Arab members of Knesset, with Arab NGOs, and at the same time, not only with Jewish NGOs and with schools and universities and hospitals and municipalities, but also with the Israeli government. So we have at the Abraham Initiatives a methodology which we call advocacy through action. Basically, we are about public policy. We want to impact, to shape public policy in Israel because we believe that the state of Israel has the most power to set policy and to make sure that this policy is implemented. We know that the Israeli government, when they set their mind on something, they can do it, or the Israeli establishment. And instead of advocating for an idea or write laws or write petitions or go to the Supreme Court or anything else, we advise the Israeli government by actually implementing projects. We try to demonstrate. We think about ideas, about interventions, about policy, and we experiment it on the ground and get the government to see the benefits of those experiments. We call it, again, advocacy through action. And I'll give you an example, a recent example, okay? It matured only last week. I heard about it only last week. We came to the Minister of Social Welfare in the previous government, in the Bennett-Lapid government, and we told him, how come that in mixed cities and mixed regions, social workers don't know the Arab community and they don't know Arabic? It's not good. They cannot really do what they need to do because the Arab community in those places is the weakest community, and it impacts, the entire environment if they are not in a better position. Let us try to teach those social workers, to teach them Arabic and to teach them about the Arab community which they are meant to serve. We can educate them about the needs of the community, about the culture, about anything that has to do with this community that they actually don't know and they cannot even communicate with it. But we will do it. We will raise the funds, and by the way, we managed to raise the funds from someone in the UK, a foundation in the UK. We raised the fund, and we said to the ministry, we will lead an experiment for 2 years. We will take 2 municipalities and we will work with the social workers in those 2 municipalities. And we will evaluate it. And if we manage to prove the value, the benefit of this intervention, will you take it upon yourself to make it policy in the ministry? And he said yes. And he said yes, but then the government changed. Nevertheless, the bureaucracy stayed, and we are working also with bureaucrats. We are counting more on the bureaucrats. And now, last week, I was told that this intervention, this course that we led for social workers is becoming now mandatory in the central school operated by the Ministry of Welfare for social workers, especially for social workers in the mixed cities. Now this is policy, okay? Yeah. It's a small thing, but it moves the needle. It moves the needle. Okay, I have other examples, but I don't want to.
Maybe we should talk about the emergency status that we're at right now. No, I want you to talk about the latest project, but my father was in the hospital lately, and I went to Israel right now in time of war, and he's okay, so no worries. But he was hospitalized, an old man, and he had this complication, and because of the war, it's a hospital in the north of Israel, and because of the war, they are also anticipating a frontier, in the north. So the whole hospital was put in the basement. So everything is like really packed with people.
In the bomb shelter.
Everything is, yeah. I mean, probably a shelter is the bomb shelter. So hundreds of patients and workers and nurses and doctors all working in like battlefield conditions, really. And when they're packed so condensely together, you could see that the fabric there, it's Arab, one Muslim man sleeping next to one Haredi Hasidic man, next to a Cherkessi man, next to, and the women is the same, and the nurses are Russian, Jewish, Arab, Muslim, Christian. It's everywhere. The doctors that come, the team of doctors, you see them, they speak in Hebrew because that's the, the regulation. They have to communicate in Hebrew, but most of them are Arab, and they're communicating in Hebrew, and you see that this really intricate fabric of these places that work together. Now, of course, outside there's war, but somehow these places block out everything and keep functioning. And you see it in the health system really in the most beautiful way, because eventually it's about saving lives, and everybody knows it. The minute they walk through the doors and they have a loved one lying on a bed in the hospital, they don't care if the nurse is Arab, if she's Jewish, if she's Haredi, if she's whatever. Everybody is there for everybody, and it's beautiful to see. But I want you to speak about
the darker side of the health
system. The darker
system.
side, exactly. Because of course, not everything is.
No, because it is beautiful to see.
Yeah.
40% of the medical personnel in Israel are Arabs, okay? And it is beautiful to see, and it's a wonderful example of the potential in other fields, like education and other fields. But the truth of the matter is that, yes, the doctors and nurses are focused on saving lives together, Jews and Arabs, saving Jews and Arabs alike, like during the COVID, the COVID days. But many of the patients, many of the families of the patients, and even some staff members are not so tolerant. And we counter manifestations of serious, severe racism and alienation, and sometimes violence against Arab medical personnel. So what we're doing now is to offer counseling for medical institutions, but not only, basically for all diverse workplaces. And it can be, again, universities and municipalities and large service providing NGOs and corporates and transportation companies, etc., etc. Many of those places are extremely diverse, and they simply don't know how to handle those tensions.
Yeah, they don't have the tools.
And they don't have the tools, they don't have the education. And again, they, almost overnight, not overnight, but over a year or two, they became very diverse. Yeah. Jewish Arab, or if you like, binational or bilingual, right, or bicultural. Because those places used to be basically Israeli Jewish. Mm-hmm. And it can be a law firm and a high-tech firm.
Banks, everywhere.
Everything. And any organization that you can imagine. And they need someone to guide them in regard to how do you manage, how do you transform the culture of those places, the organizational culture, into something which is much more inclusive and accommodating and welcoming, not only for Jews but also for Arabs. So they can identify and feel welcome and feel a greater sense of affiliation with those places. So this is something that we're doing at the moment in a very, very intense way. I'll just mention one maybe last thing before boring you too much. The education system in Israel. The level of mainly anxiety among Jewish students and anxiety from Arabs, or alienation or racism towards Arabs. And also in the Arab schools, because that the Jewish and Arab schools in Israel are not the same, they're separated. Yeah. The level of mutual racism, antagonism, anxiety is unprecedented. I think it's the worst that we could ever imagine. You hear the most horrific expressions of racism and the need to kill all Jews, kill all Arabs. The Jews are like this and the Arabs are, the most racist stereotype expressions that you can imagine. And the education ministry is not there to offer anything. Simply, it evaporated. It is not present in any way in the schools. And because of the fact that we have a very broad reach to the education system, because we operated many very large projects in the education system, now we're offering counseling to school principals and teachers in regard to how do you handle the situation in the classrooms. So this is another issue. Thank you. Maybe we can. No.
Maybe there are questions or
Yeah, I could
remarks.
talk forever, so I think that I should.
That racism that you described, is that new, or has that been building for a long time in the schools?
It's not new. I think that the level of racism and the fact that that this is almost the only voice that you hear, and the level of support to extremist politicians such as Ben Gvir, and the simplistic solutions that those students are looking for, it's terrifying. Terrifying.
The thing is, what is being advocated right now is polarization. Most of the voices that we're hearing are polarizing the community instead of kind of finding a way to keep the society glued together and working together. So right now these seeds are always there, but it depends what voices the seeds hear. What is the ground fertile for? And right now it's very fertile for the racism, because it's very polarized, and we want to change that trend by filling the spaces that are really, there's a vacuum. We're having a really very difficult time because there's a vacuum, and we need these kind of voices and these kind of initiatives to grow more and more in order to fill that vacuum.
We imported from Northern Ireland a project, an idea called shared learning, which is based on a system which is working there. Northern Ireland also, the education system is pretty much segregated. And they invented this idea to bring together school kids from adjacent schools, separated schools, to study something together on a weekly basis. And in Israel, there are a small chain of bilingual schools. It is very limited, 5 or 6 schools, and the potential is very limited because Israeli Jews and Arabs are terrified of assimilation, and they want to keep the education system separated. And we are constantly thinking how to erode this separation. And we thought that shared learning can be like halfway between bilingual school and a separate school. So we brought it to Israel. We operated this system, this methodology for a number of years in 25 schools, 25 school pairs, in mixed cities and regions. And the Ministry of Education was convinced, and they adopted it, and now they are expanding it in other schools, in other places. But right now, and by the way, we used English as the common denominator, as the subject matter for the kids to study English together. And right now, this project has stopped. We're operating it uninationally, we call it. So the kids are not meeting. We're not busing them from Jewish to Arab
But I
towns.
think everything has stopped
Yeah,
right now in general.
we don't have any choice.
Yeah.
It is simply they simply were not willing to continue with it.
Yeah.
So we're stopping for a while, and we will relaunch it again.
I think there's a question,
Yes.
Rabbi Julia,
Yes.
there.
So when you talk obviously about the shared learning stopping, presumably the hand-in-hand schools, tiny though they are, they're still going.
Yeah.
What's happening on university campuses?
Oh,
Because that's really interesting, because that's been where people, have been really very mixed, and particularly if you look at Haifa, it's practically
Yes.
50-50. What's happening now? How does that feel?
First
Are
of
you working there?
Yeah, of course. So there is no one answer. The answer is that it varies. There are universities that are handling the situation better than others, and I don't want to name names, but unless you insist.
we'll do it later, privately.
Hebrew University is on the better side, yes, definitely on the better side. Hebrew in Tel Aviv, less good Haifa and Ben Gurion. So personalities, who makes decisions, is always something very important.
Yeah.
But also the fact, and we need to remember, students, Jewish students, many of them are coming almost directly from the reserve service in Gaza, from the war to university. Okay, they don't have any time to even to adjust to civilian lives. At the same time, Arab students are terrified to go back to school. Okay, and many report that they would not go back to school. Okay, they are simply terrified that they will be harassed and attacked and who knows what. So we are working with universities. I think that again, it is very, very important for the university to be smart, to be wise. Okay, not rush to conclusions. Okay, and remember that universities, supposed to enable people to express how they feel, but it's universities. We always say at the Abraham Initiatives in recent weeks that if we will see hostilities in a serious way, it will come from universities, from the universities. Yes, please.
The nation-state law, which was passed about 5 years ago, 2018, very divisive, considered very divisive by many. State for the Jewish people and all of that hasn't made your job harder.
Of course. The nation-state law was, I wouldn't say, I don't know, was a very bad development because it not because of the nitty-gritty articles, because of the fact that it produced the construction, the legal construction for a discriminatory regime in Israel. Maybe not now, and
It's a platform.
it's a platform. If tomorrow morning the government decides not to allow, I don't know what, a municipality will decide tomorrow morning, the Carmiel municipality, not to allow Arabs to go into the gym or the swimming pool or the parks, because of the fact that it's a Jewish town, they can base it on the nation-state law, and it will not, and they will be, it will be legal. It will be legal. It could be legal. Okay, so we will have to wait and see. If any government has really bad intentions, they can base it on the nation-state law. It's really bad.
Do you use sport at all to integrate? Because I would have thought through football or something like that would be a great way, the easiest way certainly for teenage boys to be together. Have you ever used sport?
So the short answer is no, and it's not a good answer. We in the early days of our organization, 33 years ago, this type of activities, sports and culture and cooking together, flying kites together, riding horses together, do anything, the contact on itself was the main thing. And we discovered a long time that the contact itself by itself is neutral. It can bring good or bad results. Depends what you do with the contact. Hamas.
Can I ask about the current political situation in Israel? It seems to me that the current leadership in the government in Israel is doing everything it can to stop the Abraham Initiative being successful. It seems you're working against a government which is not being entirely helpful. What's your impression of this? And are there any signs of any optimism in any of this while the government exists? And how long do you think it's going to exist?
Okay, so it's very tempting to agree to your initial statement, but I can't agree because there is. I'll tell you why. Because I try to always see nuances even in the worst scenarios, and even under these really extreme very bad government. There is some openness to our ideas. And for instance, Netanyahu, I mentioned the fact that that Ehud Olmert established this authority for economic development. When Netanyahu replaced Olmert, everyone said he's going to kill it, he's going to finish. No, it made sense for Netanyahu, because for Netanyahu, economic development is a wonderful substitute for political arrangement between Israel and the Palestinians. So he was keen to continue this economic development plan or idea. And even now, we're continuing to work with the Ministry of Welfare and the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Transportation. And so there's always someone to work with. They're agents, sometimes they're sleeping agents, but we are activating them within the government. And so it's not all black.
Can I ask you, you were saying, one of the reasons why I felt so impassioned about this was that 3 years ago, when there was the last Gaza incursion, as you said, the mixed communities blew up on both sides. Why? And I'm so grateful, and one of the reasons why I wanted you to come and meet everyone today is because as you know, as Amnon, you agree, I'm just very romantic about these things. I just want a happy ending. But why do you think that this time, you just partly answered it just now, why has the community been so careful? I can't think of a better word for it. What's the difference this time round?
So I can answer, but
I feel within the Arab community, again, I feel that this is different. Again, because of the atrocities that Hamas did, they do not agree with that. So as much as they are really feeling the pain for what's happening in Gaza, and a lot of frustration, and I tell you, a lot of frustration, because we also feel that not enough is being said on Israeli media about what's going on in Gaza. The average Israeli doesn't know what's happening, the atrocities that are happening in Gaza. So there's a lot of frustration, but there's also, on the other hand, the atrocities that happen to Israelis. And so whether by solidarity or by carefulness, because there's a fear that if you say something, and this is the bad side of it, there's a fear that if you say something, you would be considered Hamas supporter, which is, again, a very well practiced trend right now in Israel. If you say anything to support Gazans, you are pro-Hamas, and that's a danger. So there is that carefulness, but there's also the complexity of the solidarity. You have to understand these are people who my dad was born in Palestine in 1936. I was born in Israel. I grew up on Shlomo Artzi, an Israeli. I've been to more Seder Pesach, the Passover nights, more than Christmas, because I'm no Christian. I'm a bad Christian. So wherever I'm invited, I go. And I got invited to a lot of Rosh Hashanah and Passover. So I love gefilte fish. So you have to understand that this community has been raised and grew up with this other community. So I think this particular moment in time is even more complex to show solidarity with one side, for us, for the Arab community within Israel. Now, I don't know.
And I will just add that I think that we, mainly civil society organizations dealing with those issues, were ready. We were quick to respond. We deployed in mixed cities and mixed regions, and we prevented escalation. Everything was coordinated, or even well coordinated, or much better than before. And also, again, so this is one thing. And also, I think that the Arab community in Israel was looking inside, understanding what is at risk, how much can get lost in a split second, in one stupid move, and how much there is to defend. And I think that those are the reasons. And maybe I'll just say that that, for me, the current, of course, there are security threats, and the state of Israel is facing huge challenges. But the challenge of our time, of this decade in Israel now, moving forward, is to reshape Israeli society. And if the challenge before or in previous decades was to create kibbutzim and moshavim in the Negev, and to absorb immigration, and to develop higher education, and the security forces, etc., etc., the challenge of our time is to reshape Israeli society so it is more inclusive and democratic, simply to allow us to continue, because we don't have any other alternative. Our only alternative to continue living in Israel is to live in peace between Jews and Arabs. And I think that we simply need to understand that. Yeah.
So, sorry, just to jump in there, I mean, thank you so much. This has been a much more positive out than I was expecting. So it's nice to hear.
Sorry to disappoint.
As a Jew, I'm very disappointed it's so positive. But on that note, that there is no choice but to create cohesion, is this then an opportunity? Is this trauma that has been suffered an opportunity to actually make that change? And if so, how?
I like the notion.
It must be an opportunity.
No.
It's the worst catastrophe. It's our duty to translate it into an opportunity, and I believe that there is an opportunity. I believe also that it's not. I'm talking about the region, about the future, not only inside of Israel, because it's interlinked between a solution to the Israeli-Palestinian dispute and to the dispute between Israel and the Arab world. And it's not entirely at the hands of Israel at the moment. Not Israel nor the Palestinians. I think that we are now part of a global move and a global crossroads, and we're either heading towards a global catastrophe, or a new, peace, or a new world order, so to speak. And Israel and the Israeli-Palestinian dispute is maybe the cornerstone of this either or, this either world war or new world order. And it needs to be resolved. And I think that everyone understands that. And I'm hoping that the superpowers, that the world will insist that we get this over with. So there is an opportunity. I truly believe that within 5-7 years, this endless dispute will be behind us.
Just to add on to that, because if we didn't feel that it's an opportunity, we'd not be here. If we felt that there's nothing to be done, we would be sitting in our homes just, watching the news like everybody else. So we're here because we believe that any moment is an opportunity to shift powers. And I would like to end with a Zen story that I heard once and I really love. I can't accredit it. I don't remember who said it, who, Confucius, whatever, something like that. But it's about how this disciple or this student goes to his master and asks, we have the evil powers within us, we have the good powers within us. How do we know what's going to win? And he said, okay, think of them like your evil powers like this black wolf, and your good powers like this white wolf, and they're fighting. Yes, but who's going to win? The one that you feed. That you feed. The one you feed is going to win. And I'm hoping in the Abraham initiatives, we're trying to feed the right kind of power, right? And we need to feed that side, because I think right now the world is lacking the white wolf fighting for cohesion and social and shared society and acceptance of the diversity of narratives that we have in Israel. It is such a small place with such a diverse place, which should have been heaven. The way I perceive the world, it should be heaven. And somehow we got it wrong until now. But every day is a chance for us to feed the white wolf and to help the society in Israel go the right way. Thank you very much for being with us, for having us here.
סיפור יפה. טוב, אהבתי.